My parents ignored me for 30 years, until my millionaire grandfather died and left me everything. Then they sued me. But when I walked into that courtroom, the judge stopped mid-sentence, stared at me, and said, "Wait, the charges are against you?" My parents had no idea who I'd become. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit hype to boost this episode. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where viewers are joining from. The house was always quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the hollow kind, the kind that makes you realize silence can be louder than screaming. It was a beautiful house, objectively speaking. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a professionally landscaped yard in a neighborhood where every lawn was meticulously maintained. From the outside, it looked like the American dream. Inside, it was a mausoleum. I learned early that I was invisible in my own home. My name is Evan Holloway. 32 years old now, living a life I never could have imagined back then. But when I was a kid, I was just the boy nobody wanted to deal with, and the inconvenience, the mistake that couldn't be undone. It started small, the way these things always do. Forgotten permission slips that meant I couldn't go on field trips. Missed parent-teacher conferences where I'd see other kids' parents chatting with teachers while I sat alone in the hallway. Birthday cakes that never appeared, celebrations that never happened, a childhood marked by absence rather than presence. But over time, it became something bigger, something more fundamental. A deep understanding that I simply didn't matter to the 2 people who were supposed to love me most. My parents were successful people by every conventional measure. My father, Richard Holloway, was a corporate attorney at one of the city's most prestigious firms. You know the type. Sharp suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent, Italian leather briefcase always in hand, phone perpetually pressed to his ear as he barked orders to paralegals and negotiated deals worth millions. He billed at $600 an hour and never let anyone forget it. My mother, Linda, was a marketing executive at a Fortune 500 company. Always networking, always traveling, always somewhere that wasn't home. She had a corner office, an expense account, and a calendar so packed that scheduling a simple dinner required going through her assistant. She gave presentations to boards of directors, managed teams across 3 continents, and won awards for her innovative campaigns. They had the perfect life, perfect careers, perfect social circle where everyone wore expensive watches and talked about vacation homes in Aspen. Perfect reputation in a community that valued success above everything else. And then there was me. The imperfection they couldn't explain away, the complication in their carefully curated existence. I wasn't planned. I learned that early, overhearing an argument when I was 6 years old, my mother's voice, sharp and bitter. I gave up the London position because of him. Do you know what that cost my career? And my father's reply. You think I wanted to turn down partner track? We both made sacrifices. Sacrifices. That's what I was. Not a son. A sacrifice. From that moment on, everything made sense. The way they looked at me, not with love, but with resentment. The way they spoke about me, when they bothered to speak about me at all, as if I were a burden they'd been unfairly forced to carry. I remember the exact moment I understood I was truly invisible to them, truly unseen. When I was 7, I won 2nd place in the school science fair. It doesn't sound like much, but to me, it was everything. I'd spent 3 weeks building a volcano, not the vinegar and baking soda kind that every kid makes, but a real working model with actual chemical reactions I'd learned about from library books. Books I'd checked out myself, walking to the library after school because no one was home to drive me. I'd mixed the chemicals carefully: hydrogen peroxide, potassium iodide, dish soap, food coloring. I'd researched the reaction, understood the science behind it, written it all out on a poster board in my neatest handwriting. The eruption created this beautiful foaming cascade that looked like real lava. It was perfect. It worked exactly as I'd planned. The science fair was on a Thursday evening. I wore my best clothes, a button-down shirt I'd ironed myself, pants that were slightly too short but clean. I stood next to my volcano in the school gymnasium, watching other kids arrive with their parents. Tommy Richardson's dad was taking pictures, beaming with pride at Tommy's solar system model. Sarah Chen's mom was video recording everything, asking Sarah to explain her plant growth experiment over and over so she could get it on camera. I kept looking at the door, waiting for my parents to walk in. Rodriguez, my teacher, had sent home 3 reminder notices. I'd put them on the kitchen counter where I knew they'd see them. I'd mentioned it at dinner 2 nights before. There's a science fair Thursday, I'd said, trying to keep my voice casual. At 6 o'clock. I'm in it. My father hadn't looked up from his phone. My mother had been reviewing a presentation on her laptop. That's nice, honey. But I'd still hoped, still believed that maybe, this once, they'd show up. Because this was important. This was me, actually achieving something. Surely that would matter. I watched the clock. 6 o'clock came and went. 6:15, 6:30. Other parents were walking around now, looking at all the projects, asking questions. Mr. Richardson stopped at my volcano. "This is impressive, son," he said, crouching down to read my explanation. "Did you do all this research yourself?" I nodded, throat tight. "Where are your parents? They must be so proud." "They're running late," I lied. "Work stuff." He smiled sympathetically, and I hated that smile, that look that said he knew, that he saw what I didn't want anyone to see. The judging started at 7. 3 teachers went around, examining each project, asking questions. When they got to mine, I explained everything, the chemical reaction, the oxidization process, why the foam looked like lava. I'd practiced my explanation for days. "Very impressive, Evan," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "You clearly put a lot of work into this." At 7:30, they announced the winners. 3rd place went to a project about butterflies. 2nd place, my name. Evan Holloway for his volcanic chemical reaction demonstration. Kids clapped. Parents took pictures. I walked up to get my red ribbon, holding it in my hands, feeling the strange mixture of pride and emptiness. I stood next to my volcano, ribbon pinned to my shirt, watching other kids celebrate with their families. Tommy's dad lifted him onto his shoulders. Sarah's mom hugged her tight, whispering something that made Sarah glow with happiness. Mrs. Rodriguez approached me slowly, carefully, like I was something fragile that might break. "Evan, honey," she said softly, kneeling down so we were eye level. "Your parents, are they coming?" I couldn't speak. I just shook my head. Her face did something complicated. Anger and sadness mixing together. "Do you need a ride home?" "No," I managed. "I can walk. It's only a few blocks." "It's dark out, sweetheart. Let me at least—" "I'm fine," I said, more sharply than I intended. "I walk home all the time." She looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. Instead, she pulled me into a hug. It was the first hug I'd gotten in months, and I almost cried right there in the middle of the gymnasium. "You did wonderful work," she whispered. "You should be very proud of yourself." But I wasn't. I was just empty. I walked home in the dark, ribbon clutched in my hand, my volcano left behind at school because I couldn't carry it by myself. The streets were quiet. Streetlights cast long shadows. Other families' houses glowed with warm light, and I could see people through windows, sitting together, talking, laughing. Our house was dark when I got there. I let myself in with my key. I'd had my own key since I was 6 because no one was usually home when school ended. The kitchen light was on. My mother was at the counter, laptop open, conference call headset on. She glanced up as I entered, raised one finger in a wait gesture, and continued her conversation. "Yes, I agree. We need to pivot the messaging for the Q3 campaign. The demographics aren't responding to the current approach." I stood there, ribbon in hand, waiting. 5 minutes passed. 10. Finally, she ended the call and pulled off her headset, rubbing her eyes tiredly. "Long day," she muttered, closing her laptop. Then, seeming to notice me for the first time, "Oh, hi, Evan. When did you get home?" "Just now, from the science fair." "The what?" She looked genuinely confused. "The science fair. At school. I had a project. I got 2nd place." I held up the ribbon. She blinked at it like it was written in a foreign language. "Oh, that's nice. Good job." The words were right, but they were hollow. She said them the way you'd acknowledge a stranger's comment about the weather. Polite, meaningless. "You didn't come?" I said quietly. "Come where?" "To the science fair. I told you about it. There were reminder notes." She sighed, and in that sigh was everything I needed to know. Exhaustion. Impatience. Annoyance that I was bothering her with this. "Evan, you know how busy things have been. I had 3 conference calls today and a presentation tomorrow. I can't just drop everything for—" She stopped herself, but not before the words hung in the air. "For something that doesn't matter." "Right," I said. "I know. Don't be dramatic. It's one school event. There will be others." But there wouldn't be. Not for them. Because they'd never come to a single one. I went to my room and carefully placed the red ribbon on my desk. 2nd place. I'd been so proud of it just an hour ago. Now it felt like proof of my own stupidity for ever thinking they might care. The next morning, I woke up early and went to the kitchen for breakfast. The ribbon was gone from where I'd left it on the counter. I searched everywhere. The counter, the table, the chair where I'd been sitting. Then I saw it. in the trash can, crumpled at the bottom, beneath coffee grounds in a takeout container. They'd thrown it away without even asking. I stared at that trash can for a long time, something hardening inside me. A decision forming without words. If I was invisible to them, fine. I'd learn to be invisible. I'd learn to need nothing from them. I'd learn to exist in their house without expecting anything more than a roof over my head. I was 7 years old, and that was the day I stopped being a child, because children need parents. And I just realized I didn't have any. Birthdays came and went without celebration. I learned to buy my own cake from the grocery store with allowance money. Small ones, single serving, that I'd eat alone in my room while pretending it didn't hurt. Christmas mornings were spent alone while they slept in, exhausted from holiday parties they'd attended without me. I'd wake up early, go downstairs, and sit by the tree they'd hired someone to decorate, looking at presents that were always practical. Clothes, school supplies, wrapped by store employees, not by hands that loved me. The breaking point, literally, came when I was 10. It was a Saturday in June, hot and bright. My parents were both home, which was rare. My mother was in the backyard, working on her laptop at the patio table. My father was in the garage, organizing something, though I suspected he was mostly hiding. I'd been teaching myself to ride my bike without training wheels. I'd watched YouTube videos at the library, studied other kids in the park, figured out the balance and momentum needed. No one had offered to teach me, so I'd taught myself, like everything else. I was getting good at it, riding up and down our quiet street, feeling almost free. On one pass, I decided to try going faster, to see if I could make it all the way to the stop sign at the end of the block. I was flying, wind in my hair, pedaling hard. I didn't see the pothole. The bike's front wheel caught, and suddenly I was airborne. The pavement came up fast. I tried to catch myself, throwing my hands out, and felt something in my left arm snap like a branch. The pain was immediate and stunning. I lay there on the asphalt, gasping, unable to breathe. My arm was bent at an angle arms aren't supposed to bend, and when I tried to move it, white-hot agony shot through my entire body. I started crying, not just from the pain, but from fear. I was alone on an empty street, hurt badly, and I didn't know what to do. Somehow I got to my feet. The bike was a twisted mess. My arm hung uselessly at my side, throbbing with each heartbeat. I stumbled home, leaving the bike in the street, focusing only on putting one foot in front of the other. The walk that was normally 5 minutes took 15. Each step jarred my arm. Sweat poured down my face. I felt dizzy and sick. I pushed through the front door, cradling my arm against my chest. "Mom?" My voice came out weak, shaky. She was still in the backyard. I could see her through the sliding glass door, typing rapidly on her laptop, phone tucked between her shoulder and ear. I walked outside, tears streaming down my face now, unable to hold them back. "Mom," I said again, louder. "Mom, I fell. I think my arm is broken." She held up one finger without looking at me, the universal wait gesture. I stood there swaying slightly, watching her finish her conversation. My arm was swelling now, turning purple and green. She said into the phone. "Yes, I agree. Let's circle back Monday with revised projections." "Perfect. Talk then." She hung up and finally looked at me. Really looked at me. Her eyes widened slightly at my tear-stained face, at the way I was holding my arm. "What happened?" "I fell off my bike. My arm—" I couldn't finish, just held it up slightly, and even that small movement made me whimper. She stood up, closing her laptop with an audible snap that felt like anger. "Evan, I'm in the middle of something important. Can this wait?" I stared at her. "Mom, I think my arm is broken. It really hurts." She let out a long, loud sigh, the kind of sigh that said I was ruining her day, that my pain was an inconvenience she didn't have time for. "Fine, get in the car." She grabbed her phone and keys, not bothering to tell my father. I followed her to the garage, each step agony, and climbed into the passenger seat of her BMW. The drive to the hospital was silent, except for the clicking of her phone keyboard. She was texting the entire way, barely watching the road. We pulled up to the emergency room entrance. She put the car in park, but left it running. "Go inside and check in," she said, not looking up from her phone. "Tell them what happened. I have a meeting in 45 minutes. They'll call me when you're done." I sat there, stunned. "You're not coming in with me." "Evan, you're 10 years old. You can check yourself in. Just tell them your symptoms. It's not complicated." "But what if they need to talk to you? What if they need consent or insurance information or—" "Your insurance card is in my wallet. Here." She pulled it out, thrust it at me. "Now go. I really don't have time for this." I took the card with my good hand, blinking back fresh tears. "Mom, Evan, go. Now." I got out of the car, cradling my arm, and watched her drive away before I'd even reached the entrance. The automatic doors slid open. The emergency room was busy, people everywhere, the smell of antiseptic and fear. A nurse at the reception desk looked up as I approached. "Hi, honey," she said gently. "Are you here with someone?" "My mom was supposed to come, but she had a meeting," I said, the words coming out in a rush. "I fell off my bike and my arm hurts really bad, and she gave me this." I held up the insurance card with my good hand. The nurse's expression changed. That look again, that pitying look I'd learned to hate. "Okay, sweetheart, let me see that arm." I showed her, and she inhaled sharply. "Oh, honey, yeah, that's definitely broken. We need to get you x-rayed right away, but first I need to get some information. Can you tell me your full name?" "Evan Richard Holloway." "Date of birth?" I told her. She typed rapidly. "And your mom's name and phone number?" I gave her the information, and she made a call. I heard her speaking in a low voice. "Yes, we have a 10-year-old with what looks like a displaced fracture. Mother dropped him off." "Yes, I know. We'll need consent for treatment." She hung up and smiled at me, but it was a tight smile. "Your mom is on her way back." Relief flooded through me. She was coming back. She cared enough to come back. But when my mother arrived 20 minutes later, she was furious. "I had to leave my meeting," she hissed as she signed forms. "Do you know how important that meeting was? Do you have any idea what I had to cancel?" "I'm sorry," I whispered. "You should be more careful. This is completely unnecessary." A doctor overheard her. He was young, maybe late 20s, and he stopped in his tracks. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "your son has a severely displaced fracture. He needs immediate treatment. This isn't unnecessary." My mother's face flushed. "I didn't mean—" "Perhaps you'd like to wait in the waiting room while we treat him," the doctor continued, his voice cold. "We'll call you when we're done." She left without another word. The doctor knelt down next to me. "Hey, Evan, I'm Dr. Matthews. That arm looks pretty painful, huh?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "We're going to take good care of you, okay? First x-rays, then we'll get you something for the pain, and then we'll set that arm. You're being very brave." I wasn't being brave. I was just used to being alone. The x-rays showed a bad break. 2 fractures, actually. They had to sedate me to set it properly. When I woke up, groggy and confused, my arm was in a blue cast from fingers to elbow. A nurse was sitting beside me, not my mother. A nurse. "Hey there," she said softly. "How are you feeling?" "Sleepy." "That's normal. The medication will wear off soon. Your mom is in the waiting room. We called her, but she said she'd wait until you were discharged." 4 more hours passed. X-rays, paperwork, instructions for care. The nursing staff kept me company, brought me juice, put on cartoons. They were kinder to me than my mother had been in years. When I was finally discharged, my mother was on her phone in the waiting room. She glanced up as the nurse wheeled me out. "Finally, let's go." In the car, she was silent, except for one sentence. "I hope you learned to be more careful." That was it. No, "Are you okay?" No, "Does it hurt?" No, "I'm sorry this happened to you." Just a lecture on being careful. As if 10-year-olds don't fall sometimes. As if accidents aren't part of childhood. As if I was the problem, not her complete absence of maternal instinct. When we got home, my father was in his study, exactly where he'd been that morning. He barely looked up when we walked in. "Everything okay?" he called out. "Broken arm?" my mother replied. "He'll be fine." That was the extent of his concern. He didn't come out to check on me, didn't ask to see the cast, didn't offer sympathy or help. I went to my room, lay on my bed, and stared at the cast. The nurses had offered to let friends sign it. I told them I didn't need that, because I didn't have friends. Not really. I was too quiet, too withdrawn. The weird kid whose parents never showed up to anything. And now I had a broken arm that would take months to heal, and no one cared except the strangers at the hospital who were paid to care. That night, I heard my parents arguing downstairs. Their voices carried through the vents. $600, my father said. "Do you know what the emergency room copay was? $600 for a broken arm." "I know, it's ridiculous. He should have been more careful." "Well, he's your son. You deal with it." "He's your son too, Richard. Don't put this all on me." I didn't want... He stopped himself, but I knew what he was going to say. I didn't want him. I lay there in the dark, my arm throbbing despite the pain medication, listening to my parents argue about the cost of my injury instead of worrying about me, and I made a decision. I would never need them again. Never ask for anything. never give them another opportunity to make me feel like a burden. I would become so self-sufficient, so independent, that their neglect wouldn't matter anymore. I was 10 years old, and I was done being their son. From then on, I was just a person who happened to live in their house. High school was more of the same pattern. My parents never attended a single football game, even though I was on the team. Not a star player, but I played. I mattered to my teammates, if not to my family. They never came to academic awards nights where I received honor roll recognition semester after semester. Never asked about college applications or SAT scores or what I wanted to do with my life. When I got accepted to a top engineering program at a prestigious university across the country, I showed them the letter at dinner one evening. It was one of the rare nights we actually sat together at the table. Usually I ate alone in my room or grabbed something quick. I slid the acceptance letter across the table, my heart pounding. This was big. This was important. Surely this would get their attention. My father glanced at it briefly, his face impassive. That's expensive. Not congratulations. Not, we're proud of you. Just, that's expensive. My mother didn't even look up from her phone, where she was scrolling through emails. Can we talk about this later? I have an early meeting tomorrow. But it's the acceptance letter, I pressed, hearing the desperation in my own voice and hating it. I got in. Full admission. They even offered partial scholarship. Evan, my father interrupted, do you have any idea what out-of-state tuition costs? Even with a partial scholarship, we're talking about significant money. I know, but I can get loans, I can work, We'll discuss it later, my mother said, still not looking at me. Not now. They never brought it up again. Not the next day, not the next week. The acceptance letter sat on the kitchen counter for 3 days before disappearing. Probably into the trash, like everything else important to me. But this time, something different happened. My grandfather called. Henry Holloway had always been the anomaly in my life. My father's father, though they barely spoke to each other anymore. There was old tension there, resentment on my father's part that I didn't fully understand as a kid. All I knew was that Henry and my parents had a cold, distant relationship marked by obligatory holiday visits and nothing more. But Henry had always been different with me. It started when I was 11, those monthly lunches that became a lifeline. He'd pick me up in his practical Ford sedan, no luxury car for Henry, despite his wealth, and we'd drive to a little diner near his office. Order whatever you want, kiddo, he'd always say, and he'd actually listen while I talked. Actually ask follow-up questions. Actually remember details from previous conversations. When I got that acceptance letter, I'd sent him an email to tell him. Just a quick note. Got into engineering program. Pretty excited. He called me within an hour. Evan, it's Grandpa. I heard about the acceptance. That's incredible, kid. Just hearing genuine enthusiasm in someone's voice about my achievement made my throat tight. Thanks, Grandpa. Have you told your parents? Yeah, they said it's expensive. There was a long pause. And what else did they say? That was pretty much it. Another pause, longer this time. When Henry spoke again, his voice was hard. I see. Well, their priorities are their own business, but Evan, you listen to me. This is your future, your dreams. You can't let anyone, make you feel like you don't deserve to pursue them. I know, but college costs money, and when are you free? I want to take you to lunch. We need to talk. We met that Saturday at our usual diner. Henry was waiting in his usual booth, and when I slid in across from him, he pulled out a folder. I've been thinking about this for a long time, he said, and your acceptance letter just confirms what I already knew. You're going places, Evan. Real places. He opened the folder. Inside were financial documents, spreadsheets, bank statements. I'm going to pay for your college education, he said simply. I stared at him. What? Grandpa? No. I can't. You can, and you will. But listen to me carefully. This isn't charity. This is an investment in someone I believe in. Do you understand the difference? I shook my head, overwhelmed. Charity is giving money to someone who needs it. An investment is giving resources to someone who will use them to create value. I'm investing in you, Evan, because I know you'll make something of yourself. You'll build something real. You'll matter. But what about Dad? Won't he? Your father made his choices long ago. He chose money over meaning, status over substance. And more importantly, he chose to be an absent father to you. I won't reward that by letting it limit your future. Henry leaned forward, his eyes intense. Your parents don't see you, Evan. That's their failure, not yours. But I see you. I see your potential. And I'll be damned if I let their indifference stop you from becoming who you're meant to be. I felt tears starting and tried to blink them away. I don't know what to say. Say you'll work hard. Say you'll make the most of this opportunity. Say you'll never let anyone make you feel small again. I will, I promise. He smiled then, warm and genuine. That's all I need to hear. Now let's order some pie and talk about this engineering program. What are you most excited to study? That lunch lasted 3 hours. We talked about everything: mechanical engineering principles, computer programming, the future of manufacturing technology. Henry had built his business from nothing, and he had insights into industry that no textbook could provide. The world needs builders, Evan, he said as we were finishing our coffee. Not just people who talk and network and climb corporate ladders. Real builders. People who create tangible value, products that solve problems, systems that work. You have that in you. I can see it. How can you tell? Because when you talk about wanting to design things, your whole face lights up. You don't want to be rich or famous. You want to make something that matters. That's rare, kid. That's special. When he dropped me off at home that afternoon, he handed me his business card. My personal cell is on there. You call me anytime, day or night. Got a problem? Call me. Need advice? Call me. Just want to talk? Call me. You're not alone in this, Evan. Remember that. I went inside and found my parents in the living room. I took a deep breath. Grandpa is going to pay for college. My father looked up from his newspaper, surprised. He's what? He's paying for my education, so you don't have to worry about the cost. There was a long, complicated silence. I could see my father's jaw working, emotions playing across his face, surprise, anger, something that might have been shame. Of course he is, my father said finally, his voice bitter. Always the hero, always showing everyone how generous he is. Richard, my mother said quietly, a warning. No, it's fine. It's perfect, actually. Let him pay. One less expense for us. And that was it. No discussion of whether I should accept. No concern about feeling indebted. Just relief that they wouldn't have to spend their money on me. I went to college that fall, and it changed everything. For the first time in my life, I was somewhere where I mattered, where my ideas had value, where hard work was recognized and rewarded. I threw myself into my studies with an intensity that surprised even me. Engineering, computer science, business management. I took every class I could, worked every internship available, learned everything about manufacturing, technology, supply chain management, materials science. But more than the academics, I learned something crucial. I was capable. I was smart. I was valuable. All the years of my parents making me feel like a burden, like I was less than, like I didn't matter. It was all lies. The problem was never me. It was them. Henry visited me twice a year, always taking me out for those long lunches where we'd talk for hours. He'd ask about my classes, my projects, my goals. He'd share stories from his own journey building his business, the failures and successes, the lessons learned. You're doing exactly what you need to do, he told me during my sophomore year. You're building a foundation, skills, knowledge, experience. That's what matters. Not the degree itself, but what you can do with it. And I want to make you proud, I said. His expression grew soft. Evan, you already have. Just by being who you are. Just by not letting your circumstances break you. That takes more strength than most people ever have to find. He reached across the table and gripped my shoulder. I need to tell you something important. Are you listening? I nodded. When I'm gone, and don't protest, I'm 78 years old. I know how this works. Everything I've built will be yours. Grandpa, I mean it. The business, the properties, the investments, all of it. Not because of blood. Blood doesn't mean anything by itself. I'm leaving it to you because you earned it, because you understand what it means to build something real, because you're the only one I trust to continue the legacy properly. I didn't know what to say. The idea seemed impossible. I was 20, barely an adult, still figuring out who I was. I don't want you to worry about this now, Henry continued. I'm not planning on going anywhere soon, but I want you to know. I want you to understand that someone believes in you. Someone sees your potential. Someone thinks you're worth investing in. But what about Dad? What will he earn? Your father will be angry. He'll feel entitled to something he never earned. Let him. His opinion stopped mattering to me the day he dropped out of my business to chase easier money and completely abandoned his responsibilities as a father. I built an empire for people who would appreciate it and grow it, not for people who just want to spend it. I graduated magna cum laude 4 years later. It was a bright May morning, and I sat among hundreds of other graduates waiting for my name to be called. My parents hadn't come. I'd sent them an invitation, even though I knew better. They'd said they might try to make it if their schedules allowed. I checked my phone that morning. No messages, no missed calls. But when I walked across that stage to receive my diploma, I heard someone cheering, loud, unashamed, proud. Henry was there, sitting in the crowd on his feet, applauding like I just won an Olympic medal. After the ceremony, he found me in the crowd and pulled me into a tight hug. "I am so damn proud of you, kid," he said, his voice thick. "So damn proud." That moment, standing there in my cap and gown, being hugged by the only person who'd ever believed in me, that was the moment I realized I'd made it. I'd survived a childhood that could have broken me. I'd made something of myself despite having every reason to fail. And I'd done it because one person cared enough to show up. We went to dinner that night, just the two of us, at a nice restaurant Henry had chosen. "So what's next?" he asked over steaks. "What's the plan?" "There's a tech startup in California that offered me a position," I said. "Decent pay, great opportunity to learn. I'm thinking of taking it." "California. That's far from here." I nodded. "I know." He studied me for a moment. "You're running away from your parents." It wasn't a question. He'd always been able to read me. "Maybe," I admitted. "Is that bad?" "No. Sometimes distance is exactly what you need. Sometimes you have to get away from toxicity to figure out who you really are without it." He leaned back in his chair. "But Evan, hear me on this. Geography doesn't fix internal wounds. You can move across the country, across the world even, but you'll take yourself with you. The pain, the questions, the feelings of not being enough, those don't disappear just because you change your address." "Then what do I do?" "You build something so real, so substantial, so valuable that those old doubts can't survive in the same space. You prove to yourself, not to them, to yourself, that you are worth everything they said you weren't." I took the job in California. Started at that tech startup, working 100-hour weeks, learning everything I could about the industry. I moved up quickly, junior engineer to senior engineer to team lead in 3 years. But more importantly, I stayed in touch with Henry. Weekly phone calls that sometimes lasted hours. Video chats where he'd ask about projects, and I'd walk him through the technical details, and he'd listen, genuinely interested, asking smart questions that made me think differently. "You're learning good things there," he said during one call. "But eventually you'll need to build your own thing. Use what you're learning, but don't stay comfortable. The world needs what you have to offer, Evan." "My own thing? Like start a company?" "Why not? You've got the skills. You've got the work ethic. And you've got something more important than both of those. You've got hunger. You want to prove something. Use that." "I don't know if I'm ready. Nobody's ever ready. But you're capable. That's what matters." Those conversations shaped me more than any college course. Henry wasn't just my grandfather. He was my mentor, my advisor, my family. The only family that counted. When I was 28, I finally felt ready to make my own move. I'd saved money, made connections, learned the industry inside and out. I was preparing to leave the startup and launch my own venture. I called Henry to tell him. "I'm doing it," I said. "I'm starting my own company, manufacturing automation software. I've got the concept, the initial capital, even a couple potential clients." "That's fantastic, Evan." His enthusiasm was genuine, infectious. "Tell me everything." We talked for 2 hours about my business plan, my strategy, my concerns. He offered advice, made suggestions, challenged my assumptions in ways that made my idea stronger. "You're going to do great things, kid," he said as we were ending the call. "You already have. But this is going to be special. I can feel it. Thanks, Grandpa, for everything, for believing in me when no one else did, for investing in me, for being there." "Evan," his voice grew serious, "you earned every bit of it. Never forget that, and remember what I told you. One day, everything I've built will be yours, not because of blood, but because you're the only one who understands what it really means to build something that matters. Promise me you'll keep building, keep creating. Don't let anyone make you feel small." "I promise, Grandpa." "Good. I love you, kid." "I love you too." That was the last real conversation we had. 3 months later, I got the call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday morning. I was in a meeting when my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I finally excused myself and stepped into the hallway. 12 missed calls, all from my father. My stomach dropped. He never called me. I dialed back with shaking hands. "Dad? Your grandfather is dead." His voice was flat, emotionless. "Heart attack. Last night?" The hallway tilted. I grabbed the wall for support. "What? No." I just talked to him last week. He was fine. The funeral is Saturday. I'll text you the details." He hung up. I stood there in that corporate hallway, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, trying to process what I'd just heard. Henry, my grandfather, the only person who'd ever really known me, gone. I took emergency leave from work and flew home for the funeral. It was a small service. Henry had outlived most of his friends, and my father had made no effort to notify his business associates or extended family. It was just me, my parents, a handful of distant relatives, and the funeral director. My parents sat in the front row, dressed in expensive black, whispering to each other, planning something. I sat alone in the back, grieving for the only family member who'd ever mattered. After the service, my mother approached me. It was the first time she'd spoken to me in over a year. "Evan?" She attempted a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's been too long. You look well." I stared at her. "I haven't changed my number, Mom. You could have called any time." She waved a hand dismissively. "You know how busy things get. But we're family. That's what matters now." My father appeared beside her, equally false in his sympathy. "We should all get together this week," he said. "Discuss the estate, make sure everything is handled properly." So that was it. They didn't care that Henry was gone. They cared about the money. "There's a will reading tomorrow," my father continued. 10 a.m. at the lawyer's office. Don't be late." They walked away before I could respond. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Henry, about all the conversations we'd had, all the advice he'd given me. I thought about that last promise I'd made. Keep building. Don't let anyone make you feel small. The next morning, I arrived at the lawyer's office 10 minutes early. My parents were already there, sitting in expensive leather chairs, looking confident. Entitled. The lawyer, Mr. Gregory Morrison, was a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and kind eyes. He'd known Henry for decades. "Thank you all for coming," he said, settling behind his desk. "I'll keep this brief. Henry Holloway left very specific instructions regarding his estate." My mother straightened in her chair, already imagining the money. My father leaned forward, attentive for the first time in years. Mr. Morrison opened a folder and began to read. "I, Henry Holloway, being of sound mind and body, do hereby leave the entirety of my estate to my grandson, Evan Holloway." Silence. My mother's face went white. My father's mouth fell open. Mr. Morrison continued. "This includes all business holdings, properties, investments, and personal effects. I leave nothing to my son, Richard Holloway, or his wife, Linda Holloway, as they have demonstrated no interest in family beyond financial gain." "What?" My mother's voice was shrill. "That has to be a mistake." "There's no mistake," Mr. Morrison said calmly. "Henry revised this will 6 months ago. He was very clear about his wishes." My father stood abruptly. He was senile, manipulated. This will be contested. "Henry underwent a complete cognitive evaluation before finalizing the will," Mr. Morrison replied, unruffled. "He was of sound mind. The will is ironclad." My mother turned to me, fury in her eyes. "What did you do? What did you say to him?" I found my voice, though it felt distant. "I didn't do anything. I was there. I actually spent time with him." "He barely even spoke to us," my father shouted. "We're his family." Mr. Morrison's voice cut through the room. "That was his choice. He felt you'd made yours long ago." My mother stood, grabbing her purse. "This isn't over. We'll see you in court, Evan." They stormed out, leaving me alone with Mr. Morrison. "I'm sorry," he said gently. "Henry knew this would be difficult. He left you a letter." He handed me an envelope. My name was written on it in Henry's familiar handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. "Evan, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't say goodbye properly, but I'm not sorry about this will. You earned every penny of what I'm leaving you. Not because of blood, because you became the man I always hoped you'd be. Honest, hard-working, kind. Your father will fight this. Let him try. The will is solid. But more importantly, you're solid. You built yourself into something real, and that's worth more than any inheritance. Use the money wisely. Grow the business, create jobs, build things that matter, and never forget, your value comes from what you create, not what you're given. I'm proud of you, Evan. I always was. Love, Grandpa Henry." I read it 3 times, tears blurring the words. Mr. Morrison gave me time to compose myself, then walked me through the details. The estate was worth substantially more than I'd imagined, and the business alone was valued at $15 million. Properties, investments, personal assets. It totaled over $23 million. I was suddenly a millionaire, and I'd never felt more alone. Your grandfather was very proud of you, Mr. Morrison said as I prepared to leave. He talked about you constantly, what you were building, what you were becoming. What I was becoming? He smiled. He said you were going to change everything. I think he was right. I left the office in a daze, walking to my rental car, trying to process everything. My phone buzzed, a text from my father. This isn't over. I sat in the car, staring at that message, feeling the weight of everything crashing down. Grief, anger, confusion, and then, beneath it all, something else. Determination. Henry had believed in me. He'd given me the tools to build something real. I wasn't going to let him down. The next 2 years were a blur. I honored my grandfather's legacy by doing exactly what he'd taught me. I built something real. Using the inheritance as capital, I founded Holloway Innovations. We started small, developing software solutions for manufacturing companies, streamlining supply chains, creating automation tools that actually worked. I hired a team of brilliant engineers and designers, people who cared about the work, not just the paycheck. We worked 18-hour days, testing, failing, improving. Our first major product was a supply chain management system that used AI to predict and prevent bottlenecks. It revolutionized how mid-sized manufacturers operated. Within 6 months, we had 50 clients. Within a year, 200. The business exploded. I reinvested everything. We launched subsidiary companies focusing on different aspects of industrial technology, Holloway Logistics, Holloway Analytics, Holloway Systems. Each one grew faster than the last. I barely slept. I lived in the office, driven by Henry's words. Keep building, create value. The press started noticing. Business magazines wrote profiles. Tech blogs covered our innovations. I was invited to speak at conferences, to serve on advisory boards. At 32, I was the CEO of a company worth $50 million and growing. But my parents? They had no idea. They'd cut me off completely after the will reading. No calls, no emails, just silence, and, I assumed, legal maneuvering. I'd moved on. Built a life they knew nothing about. Until the day the court summons arrived. I was in my office reviewing quarterly projections when my assistant knocked. Mr. Holloway, this just came. It's marked urgent. I opened the envelope. Official court documents. Richard Holloway and Linda Holloway versus Evan Holloway. Contest of estate will. They were suing me for the entire inheritance. I read through the filing. Their lawyer claimed I had manipulated a vulnerable elderly man and exerted undue influence to secure the inheritance. They wanted the will invalidated and the estate divided according to standard inheritance law, which would give them everything. I called Mr. Morrison immediately. I've been expecting this, he said calmly. Don't worry, Evan. The will is solid. Henry prepared for this exact scenario. Can they actually win? No, but they can make things difficult. Expensive, time-consuming. That's what they're counting on, that you'll settle just to make it go away. I'm not settling. Good. That's what Henry would have wanted. I'll represent you. We'll fight this all the way. The case dragged on for months. Depositions, interrogatories, document requests. My parents' lawyer was aggressive, trying every angle to discredit me or prove Henry was incompetent. But we had evidence. Medical records showing Henry's perfect cognitive health, financial records proving I'd never taken money from him during his life, testimony from his doctors, his accountants, his business partners. And we had something else. Henry's own testimony. 6 months before his death, Henry had gone to the court himself and filed a declaration anticipating this exact lawsuit. In it, he detailed his reasons for disinheriting his son. Richard has demonstrated repeatedly that he values money over family, status over character. He abandoned his own son emotionally and would have done so physically if not for social expectation. I will not reward that behavior with my life's work. My parents' lawyer tried to suppress it. The judge denied the motion. The trial was set for November. November came cold and gray. The courthouse was downtown, an imposing building of stone and glass that seemed designed to intimidate. I arrived alone, carrying my briefcase, wearing one of the suits I'd bought for business meetings. Professional, composed, ready. My parents were already inside. I could see them through the courtroom windows as I approached. My mother in an expensive black dress, pearls at her neck. My father in a tailored suit, whispering aggressively to their lawyer. They looked confident, entitled, like they'd already won. I pushed through the doors and stepped inside. The bailiff looked up, then did a double-take. Mr. Holloway? He said, surprised. I nodded. That's me. You're the defendant? Yes. He looked confused, but gestured toward the defense table. "Right this way, sir." As I walked down the aisle, I noticed people turning, whispering. The clerk looked up from her computer, eyes widening. A court reporter nudged her colleague. My parents noticed the commotion. They turned, saw me, and their expressions flickered with confusion. I sat at the defense table next to Mr. Morrison, who gave me an encouraging nod. "All rise," the bailiff called, the Honorable Judge Patricia Chen presiding. We stood as Judge Chen entered. She was in her 50s, with sharp eyes and an air of no-nonsense authority. She'd seen everything in her 20 years on the bench. She settled into her seat and opened the case file. "We're here today for Holloway versus Holloway. Case number—" She stopped mid-sentence, looking up at me. Then she did something unexpected. She stood again, staring. "Wait." Her voice carried across the silent courtroom. "You are the defendant, Evan Holloway?" Every head in the courtroom swiveled toward me. I stood, confused. "Yes, Your Honor, that's correct." Judge Chen's expression shifted to something like disbelief mixed with recognition. "Mr. Holloway, I didn't expect someone with your position to appear in person. Most people at your level send lawyers to handle these matters." My mother whipped around in her seat, staring at me like she'd never seen me before. My father leaned forward, his confidence cracking. "Position? What position?" Judge Chen glanced at the plaintiff's table, then back at me. "You're listed here as Evan Holloway, grandson of the deceased. But you're also Evan Holloway, CEO of Holloway Innovations, founder and primary shareholder of multiple technology subsidiaries. Current estimated net worth of, let me see." She consulted her notes. "Approximately $56 million. The courtroom erupted in whispers. My mother's jaw literally dropped. My father went pale, gripping the table. Their lawyer looked like he'd been punched. "Mr. Holloway," Judge Chen continued, "I attended your keynote speech at the National Manufacturing Conference last year. Your work in industrial automation has been revolutionary. It's an honor to have you in my courtroom, though I wish it were under better circumstances." "Thank you, Your Honor," I managed, still processing what was happening. She sat back down, composing herself. "Now then, let's proceed with this case, though I'll admit I'm curious how it got this far." My parents' lawyer, a slick man named Robert Thorpe, stood on shaking legs. "Your Honor, our position remains unchanged. We believe the defendant manipulated the deceased, Henry Holloway, into disinheriting his own son, the rightful—" "Mr. Thorpe," Judge Chen interrupted, her tone sharp. "I've reviewed the case file thoroughly. Before we go any further, I need to address something." She pulled out a document. 6 months before his death, Henry Holloway visited this very courthouse. He filed a declaration with my predecessor, Judge Martin, specifically anticipating this lawsuit. In it, he detailed his wishes and his reasoning. I'm entering this into evidence now. She handed copies to both legal teams. The declaration states, and I quote, "I leave my estate to my grandson Evan not because he is perfect, but because he earned it through character, effort, and genuine love. My son Richard abandoned his own child emotionally. I will not reward that failure with my life's work. If Richard contests this will, let it be known. I am of sound mind, I am not being manipulated, and this is my final, conscious decision." My mother made a strangled sound. My father stared at the table, his face flushed red. Judge Chen continued, "The declaration was witnessed by 3 independent parties and accompanied by a cognitive evaluation from Dr. Michael Sung, a respected neurologist. The evaluation concluded that Henry Holloway was in perfect mental health." She looked directly at my parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Holloway, your case hinges on the claim that your son manipulated your father. Yet the evidence shows that Evan Holloway was financially independent during Henry's life, never requested money, and built his own considerable fortune through his own efforts. Meanwhile, Henry's declaration explicitly states that you, Mr. Holloway, rarely visited your father and showed interest only when money was discussed." My father's lawyer tried to interject. "Your Honor, we have testimony." "From whom?" Judge Chen cut him off. "I've reviewed your witness list. You have no medical experts, no evidence of coercion, no proof of manipulation. What you have is disagreement with your father's decision." She leaned forward. "Let me be clear. This court does not exist to overturn the wishes of competent adults simply because their children disagree with their choices. Henry Holloway had every right to leave his estate to whomever he chose, and based on the evidence, he chose wisely." The courtroom was dead silent. "The charges against Evan Holloway are dismissed. Furthermore, I'm ruling that this lawsuit constitutes malicious litigation. Mr. and Mrs. Holloway, you will be responsible for all court costs and the defendant's legal fees." My mother gasped. "You can't—" "I can, and I have." Judge Chen's voice was iron. You wasted this court's time and resources pursuing a frivolous case out of greed and entitlement. Consider yourselves fortunate I'm not holding you in contempt. She banged her gavel. Case dismissed. The sound echoed like thunder. My parents sat frozen, faces drained of color. Their lawyer scrambled to gather papers, clearly eager to escape. I stood there, barely breathing, trying to process what had just happened. Mr. Morrison put a hand on my shoulder, smiling. Well fought, Evan. Henry would be proud. Judge Chen addressed me directly as the courtroom began to clear. Mr. Holloway, I apologize that you had to endure this, but I hope you'll continue your grandfather's legacy of building things that matter. We need more people like you and Henry Holloway. Thank you, Your Honor. I intend to. As I turned to leave, my mother rushed toward me, tears streaming down her face. Evan, wait. I stopped, looking at this woman who'd given birth to me but never really been my mother. We didn't know, she said desperately. We didn't know you'd become so successful. We thought... You thought I was still that invisible kid you could ignore, I finished quietly. The one not worth your time. And when you found out Grandpa left me money, suddenly I mattered. Not because of who I was, because of what I had. That's not fair. Fair? I felt the anger I'd suppressed for years rising to the surface. You want to talk about fair? You never attended a single school event, never celebrated my birthdays. You put a second-place ribbon I won in the trash without looking at it. You dropped me at the emergency room with a broken arm and left for a meeting. Her face crumpled, but I couldn't stop. You ignored me for 30 years. 30 years. And the only reason you're speaking to me now is because you wanted my inheritance. Not me. The money. My father approached, looking older somehow, diminished. Evan, son, don't call me that. My voice was steady, calm, final. You lost that right a long time ago. We're still family, my mother sobbed. We're your parents. No, I said simply. Family shows up before there's money involved. Family cares when things matter. You had 30 years to be my family. You chose not to be. I picked up my briefcase. Goodbye. Evan, please. My mother reached for my arm. I stepped back. Mr. Morrison will send you the bill for legal fees. Have your lawyer contact him with any questions. I walked toward the exit, my footsteps echoing in the emptying courtroom. Behind me, I heard my mother collapse into sobs. My father's voice trying to comfort her, but sounding hollow, lost. I pushed through the courthouse doors into the cold November air, and for the first time in my life, I felt free. 3 years have passed since that courtroom confrontation. Holloway Innovations now operates in 12 countries. We've created over 2,000 jobs. Our technology has helped hundreds of companies become more efficient, more sustainable, more profitable. I've honored my grandfather's legacy by doing exactly what he taught me, building things that matter. Last year, we launched the Henry Holloway Foundation. It provides scholarships to kids from difficult family situations, kids who need someone to believe in them the way Henry believed in me. We've already helped 87 students attend college. That number will double next year. I think about Henry every day. His voice is still in my head during difficult decisions. What are you building? Is it real? Does it matter? I'm dating someone now. Sarah. She's a civil engineer, brilliant and kind, and she knew me before the money, before the company name meant anything. She saw me for who I actually was, not what I had. We talk about family sometimes, about the scars we carry. She gets it. Her parents weren't neglectful, but they weren't present either. We understand each other's wounds. Last week she asked me something I'd been thinking about. Do you ever regret not reconciling with your parents? I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, I said finally. Some relationships can't be fixed because they were never real to begin with. They didn't want me, they wanted what I represented. And when I wouldn't give it to them, they showed me exactly who they were. That doesn't make you sad? Sometimes, but mostly I feel grateful. Grateful for Henry, grateful I learned to build something real, grateful I didn't let their indifference define me. I pulled out my wallet and showed her something I carry everywhere, a photo of Henry and me from my college graduation, his arm around my shoulders, both of us grinning. This is family, I said. Not blood, not obligation, choice, love, showing up. Sarah squeezed my hand. He'd be proud of who you became. I hope so. I try to make sure he would be. I haven't heard from my parents in 3 years. Not since the courtroom. I heard through Mr. Morrison that they divorced 2 years ago. Apparently the stress of losing the lawsuit and the legal fees was too much. My mother moved to Arizona. My father remarried. Neither of them has reached out, and I'm okay with that. Because here's what I learned. You can't force people to love you. You can't make them see you if they're determined to look away. All you can do is build a life worth living and surround yourself with people who choose to be there. My company continues to grow. Last quarter, we hit $100 million in revenue. We're developing new technologies, expanding into renewable energy, creating solutions that will help manufacturers reduce their carbon footprints. Every success feels like a tribute to Henry. Every job we create feels like honoring his memory. I speak at universities now, talking to students about entrepreneurship and resilience. I always tell them the same thing Henry told me. Your worth isn't determined by how people treat you. It's determined by what you build with your life. Surround yourself with people who see you. And when you succeed, lift others up the way someone once lifted you. Some of them come up afterward and tell me their stories: difficult parents, families who don't understand them, feeling invisible in their own homes. I tell them what I wish someone had told me earlier. It gets better. You build your own family. You create your own worth. And one day, you'll realize their failure to see you was never about you at all. Last month, I visited Henry's grave for the first time since the funeral. I'd been avoiding it, afraid of the grief, afraid of feeling that loss all over again. But when I stood there, looking at his headstone, I didn't feel sad. I felt grateful. I kept my promise, Grandpa, I said out loud, not caring who heard. I kept building, and I didn't let anyone make me feel small. The wind blew through the cemetery trees, and for a moment I could almost hear his voice. That's my boy. I always knew you would. I left a copy of our latest financial report on his grave. I don't know if that's weird, but it felt right. He'd want to know the numbers. He'd want to see the growth. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. Dinner tonight? I want to hear about the new contract. I smiled and replied, Absolutely, I'll cook. I drove home through the city I'd built a life in, past the office building where Holloway Innovations occupied 3 floors, past the coffee shop where I still went for my morning meetings, past the park where I ran every morning. This was my life, built from nothing. Built on the foundation Henry gave me, yes, but sustained by my own effort, my own choices, my own determination to create something real. My parents missed all of it. They missed watching me grow. They missed seeing me build something extraordinary. They missed the chance to be part of something meaningful. And that's on them, not me. Because here's the final truth I learned. Some people will spend their whole lives chasing what they think they deserve, never realizing that love and family are earned through presence, not demanded through blood. My parents wanted an inheritance. They got a lawsuit and legal bills. I wanted a family. I built one from scratch, piece by piece, with people who chose to see me, and in the end, that made all the difference.